You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody. After a week off for me up in the in Scarbados for a week, I'm back leading this week's show, and well, this is as rare as rocking horse poo, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, not only do we irregularly get Sam on the show, but John as well. I mean, gentlemen, how are you? I mean, I'll go to you, John. Obviously, we were discussing off air the fact that you're not too disappointed by the North London Derby result today, but a good weekend of sport, and You were Johnny on the ground on Friday at the friendly against Scarlets, weren't you?
I was indeed, yeah. First of all, it's nice to be back. It's nice to be able to fit the Fezcast in. I genuinely love doing this for you guys, and it's been a bit of a pain that I've not been able to get on as much as I'd like to over the course of the last few months. But yeah, was at the game Friday. Really enjoyed it. It's nice to be back after what felt like a massively long summer away from club rugby. Nice to see some of the new signings, getting a first glimpse at Fergus Burke and what he'll be able to do for us. And North London Derby is what it is, mate. Spurs disappointed me. Water is wet, sky's blue.
But Sam, I mean, how about you? I mean, how's your summer been? This is your first appearance, I think, this or is it your second appearance this season?
I think it's my first. I think I did one towards the end of the last series, which, you know, when we just get rid of the summer, which we're all bored with, because all it was football, to be honest, which isn't really my cup of tea. It feels like I've only been on a couple of episodes ago. But yeah, it's not, as John said, I mirror that. I love doing this. I get an hour to talk about Saracens. I mean, you know, what better thing in life is there?
Well, you're absolutely right there, of course, and we enjoy doing it and we enjoy bringing this to you. Let's do off the pitch, shall we, Sam? And first up, I think you were the first person to post in our WhatsApp group. New kits. We've seen for a couple of weeks the new home kit, and John, you guys can't see it because, as I say, we've got faces for radio and podcasts, not necessarily for pictures. But John, you got your new kit on. Looks resplendent and gorgeous. I love it. The plain black. Yeah, the away kit released this week as well. It's kind of divided opinion, as it always does, doesn't it, Sam? And I mean, I think you said you can't work out whether you like it or not or whatever, but apparently decided by a group of fans, including Matt, but he can't remember what he voted for. I suppose the thing to say is it's an interesting design, whereas the home kit's plain black, classy, traditional, whatever. This has got a little bit more funky. Yeah, it's going to divide opinion. I suppose the answer is, Sam, if you don't like it, don't buy it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, look, I think you and I are very similar insofar as I think we've had a long enough period now when it comes to kits that are quite funky, a little bit different about there. You know, why not go back to a little bit of tradition? When I first started supporting Saracens, we didn't even have changed shorts and socks. We wore black shorts and red socks home and away, and we just changed our top. And there's a massive part of me that would actually be completely okay if that was the case. I mean, to be fair, we've got grey away shorts this time around. It pretty much might as well be black. But I was very much hoping, talking about the home kit, I'm a big fan of the home kit. I like the all black look. I was really hoping for some red socks, though, proper traditional, old school Tony Diprose style red socks, which we haven't got. Maybe that might make an appearance at some point. But the away shirt, if I'm honest, I think I've had time to digest a little bit now, and I think it's going to be one of those shirts that looks better on a player than it does on a supporter. Just because of the way that the lines are. I said obviously in our group that I quite fancied seeing a return to the old school. Oh, John's got one. Of course, John's got one. Of course, John's got one. Single-handedly keeping the club shop open, John Manning.
I'm doing my best.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Because I mean, the one comment that was made last week by Barry was that he would like it to be once biannual or once every 2 seasons or something. But at the end of the day, when a shirt costs 75 quid, that's all money going in the coffers, isn't it? And I will take issue with you as well about it looking better on players than spectators, because I'm sure Alison Pearson would disagree with you, who look meaner than most of the players in the promotional photographs that come out. I think Alison did a fantastic job of putting the willies up the opposition.
I think what I meant was when it looks a bit baggy, because a lot of us prefer, we're not going to turn up to the Stonex with something that you can see your nipples on a cold day sort of thing. So when it looks a bit baggy because of where the lines are, I'm not sure if the aesthetic is quite as good as if we're watching Maro Itoje barge around the turf in it. We'll see. I've got a long history of deciding that I'm going to go to the club shop and get the home shirt and walking out with the away one. So we'll see in a couple of weeks' time at sale which one I plumb for. And as you guys know, I do have a tradition where I buy a shirt and I keep wearing that shirt until that shirt sees Saracens lose live, and then it gets ditched forever. So I'm hoping that I can buy one and it will last me the whole season like it did a couple of years ago.
Well, yeah, we all hope that, don't we? And I mean, we do also see notes from the fans forum, and I mean, they've been out there and everything like that. We won't go into too much, but it's good to see that ticket sales seem to be on the up, John.
It certainly is. I mean, I see the statistics for was it 82% of season ticket holders have kept their ticket, but it's around about 600 down on last year. But if they can, the match day sales are steady enough, and we can get the sellouts that the club want to be able to then do, increase the capacity to 15,000 and get some more stable looking stands behind the post, then hopefully that will happen. Because, I know we've got a lot of local competition in other, huge sports clubs, especially in football, but it always frustrates me that we've got, like, in my opinion, the greatest rugby team in the country, and you can't get people to come down and watch them. I don't know what the solution is, but hopefully someone, and the new guy Mark will be able to tap into tactics he's used to get people to go and watch Burnley. Because if he can manage that, then surely he can get people to come and watch Saracens.
Well, yeah, you're not wrong there, are you? I mean, and you've mentioned Mark Thompson there, and I think it's worthwhile that we move on to Mark, and his visibility recently, particularly on Facebook, and I know I said it around to you guys, and it's all come out of the idea of playing games in the USA again, which is a very divisive topic for a lot of fans. Everybody read a headline on a post and went, "What the bloody hell are you playing at? We don't want games in the USA." And I think we can hold our hands up here now and say that if something like that was happening, I don't think that's, as John's just said, we're desperately trying to grow the game in our own country. Why are we worried about growing the game in the United States? But then Mark came on Facebook and on the fans forum, whatever it was, I think he said he was a long-time lurker and a first-time contributor, but pointed out, read behind the headlines. And all he said, quite sensibly, is he's been asked a specific question in relation to, this is something you've done in the past. Will you look at it? He said, well, we'll look at any option to see whether it can help us grow the game and grow our audience. And, that's fair dues. I mean, if they turn around and said, if playing a game in Timbuktu meant you get an extra 10,000 season tickets, you take that because it'd be a no-brainer. The fact of the matter is it won't. And we all know that playing games in the United States won't have that uptake. And all it means is that the people who can afford to go and support Saracens, it almost, I think, creates a wedge, Sam, between those that, would want to, you can go along to a game and pay for a £15 standing ticket, whatever it may be, and that's all they can afford. And then they suddenly think, oh, you're buggering off to America and I can't be part of that. And I don't think that would be right. And, and I know Mark listens to this, so I'm sure he will take on board that, if that was a decision that was to be made, I don't think it would get universal support, would it, Sam?
I don't know, if I'm brutally honest with you. I think I'd like to think that there's more people that support this club that are probably a little bit more holistic in their views of what a modern rugby club needs. We've got a World Cup coming up in America. Let's ride the wave of that. If the club came out tomorrow and said they're going to play one of next season's games in the US, I'd be massively behind it as long as we made good use of it. We've done it twice. We haven't made good use of it in the past. Perhaps we'll learn from our mistakes. But on the point of, certain people can't afford to do certain things, that's the same in every walk of life. And, if we only did things that people at the bottom rung could afford to do, we wouldn't have a particularly great country. So there is hospitality at the StoneX. We have it because some people can afford it and some people can't. I can't, and one day I will. And I aspire to do that. Others don't have that aspiration, but that's between them and themselves. But the way I see it is we've got different tiers within a pricing within the club. You can buy a pro shirt in the club for 120 quid, or you can buy a supporters shirt at the clubhouse for 75 quid. There are tiers of everything, and people will choose their own tier. As you quite rightly said, Jez, if it helps us commercially grow the club to become an internationally recognised brand, then let's play games in other countries. It's as simple as that. We're not a big enough club with enough tradition when you look at the global sport to say, we can't do this, we can't do that. We've got to look after the 9,000 people that come along to a game on a Saturday afternoon. We don't have an 80,000, 100,000 fan base that some football clubs have. We've got to look at every option to try and grow our amazing brand. As John said, we are one of, if not rugby club in the country, and we want as many people to know about it as possible. So let's shout it from the rooftops and let's go to the States and play an amazing game against Quins or whatever, beat them 50-0 like we usually do, and then the whole of the US will be behind us. Happy days.
Yeah, I will take a little bit of issue there. I mean, you talk about the fact there's hospitality at StoneX. Yes, there is, but also there's the ability to stand round the sides, which you don't get. As soon as you throw in the fact that you've got to pay hotels, airfares, and everything like that, that takes an awful lot of people out of the equation, John, doesn't it? Who day in, day out, and I can't count myself in this because I'm not a season ticket holder, just through vagaries of life and where I am in the country and whatever, it's more difficult for me. But there's an awful lot of people there who will go in, week out, and then suddenly one of the games that they want to go to is taken away from them. And I feel sometimes that might, and as I say, this is all ifs, buts, and maybes. But look after what you've got first before expanding something, John.
Yeah, definitely. I think the reason why it's particularly a contentious issue at the moment is just because we get less games. Obviously, there's less teams in the league. Therefore, whatever you're paying for your season ticket, you're getting less games out of anyway. And I think if you've got 9 league games in a calendar year and that's it, or in a season, sorry, and that's all there is, then taking one of them away, it's a larger chunk than if there was 14 or whatever there might have been in the past. So I think that's probably that's probably why I wouldn't want to do it. I get what Sam said about tiers and of what people can afford and stuff, and I don't know if I actually ever said anything in the group, but my season ticket's a red and black season ticket. I sit in the North Stand. Last season, for the Exeter game, I took myself and my son to the Tulip Club for the day, and for the Gloucester game towards the end of the season was in the W Club just to see what it was all about. 2 really, really great experiences, but I prefer to sit in the North Stand. I just do. It's just that sense of camaraderie amongst the people that I see every time I'm there, becoming part of the group, and we've got each other's phone numbers and we keep in touch on, during the week. And yeah, that's not really me. I don't really fit in those circles probably, even though I can do it if I want to sometimes. I wouldn't do it permanently, but I certainly wouldn't fly transatlantic to watch a game of rugby. However, what Sam's saying is absolutely correct. You can't, that's why these football clubs go on these money-spinning pre-season tours, because it does ultimately mean that you're going to have people tens of thousands of miles away who will spend a fortune on your online club shop, which is what most sports clubs want you to be, really. They're not worried if you buy a ticket. As long as you're spending... I've spent more money in the club shop this weekend than what Charlie's season ticket costs, for example. So it just is what it is.
I do think in Mark, we've got somebody, though, that... and I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that Nigel, Lucy, and the Ray family, etc., beforehand weren't like this. But I think, John, I know he was sort of joking a little bit about it, but having come from Burnley, I think Mark's in a really good commercial position to be able to look at both a core group of fans. You look at Burnley, they're a smaller club, very tight. Trying to play it with the big boys. To a degree, we're a bit similar, but it's sort of into sport. We're trying to compete with the Spurs and the Arsenals of this world. And I think that he very much appears, in terms of his two appearances on the Fezcast so far, and I'm hoping there'll be many, many more to come. He seems to have a really good and striking a really great balance between really thinking about the fans, really wanting to be part of that, and really wanting, being really happy to be part of what we've built, but also understanding and trying to strike a balance between that and the commercial viability of a modern day rugby club and what it means to be a sports club in North London. And both of those interviews massively excited me. I'm a big fan of Mark's, and I think that our club's in really, really good hands on both sides of things.
Yeah, indeed they are. And I think, from those of us who criticise us for sitting on the fence on some of these issues, I think we've jumped over both sides of those fences there quite nicely. Last part of this, I just want to move on to the SSA sponsorship. And Hugh Tizard and May Campbell been sponsored by the SSA for a couple of seasons now each, done a fantastic job, always been superb supporters of the SSA, and likewise the SSA superb supporters of them. But what the SSA have always been good at is looking at young up-and-coming players, new players, and getting behind them and giving them a leg up. And indeed, the two choices, I think, for the SSA-sponsored players of Akina Gondwer and Louis Johnson are fantastic choices. And I'm sure it's a great introduction, particularly to Louis, I think, John, to being part of this club.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the young man's he's travelled all the way down the country pretty much. He's a long way from home. And if we can, make him feel as welcome as possible and give him the backing of the SSA and all of us, then, yeah, it can only do him good. It's the same for Akina as well. Like you said, I think they're two very good picks. And it's also great that May and Hugh are sort of the spotlight shone on both of them. May Campbell's amazing, superb. Got a run out of it. Frustrates me that she can't get an England team because she'd be in mine, to be honest. And it's same for Hugh Tizard actually. But yeah, it's been great to get a little bit closer to those two through the SSA, and hopefully the two new guys will feel that it's beneficial to them, and hopefully feel more part of the club. But like I said, especially Louis, he's a long way from home, and we should show him some love.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Louis. I think I was more excited by his acquisition than Fergus Burke, to be honest. Not to say anything against him. I think Fergus looks like a cracking acquisition, but Louis looks a really, really hot prospect, and I'm really hoping that he gets. We don't go down the Ruben de Haas sort of model with Louis, and he gets loads of game time. I'm looking forward to a very kind of Farrell Hodgson-esque sort of scenario where they flitted in and out pretty much seamlessly over the course of the season. So good luck to all of them. And yeah, great choices. On a side note, I think this season's a massive season for Hugh Tizard, actually. I think he is in the England frame, certainly, because he's been on a few training camps. But for Saracens this year, I think he's laid a really great foundation for a couple of years. And I think this year's his year to step up and be counted amongst one of the big dogs on the pitch. And I think he's totally got the talent to do it. And I'm really excited to see what he does this year, to be honest.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hi, Alex Osterberry here, Director of Rugby for Saracens Women. You're listening to the Saracens Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Women's rugby. Let's talk internationals first before we talk about Saracens' great performance on the weekends. It's all doing in reverse order, as it were. First things first, I can't talk too much about it, but big win for Scotland, including a couple of Saracens players, and a good win for Ireland, which is all good for them. But let's talk about England, because that's where we have most Saracens influence. And two wins, France and New Zealand, which on the face of it is great. I don't know. I'm just left slightly underwhelmed, because in both games, England went out the blocks, did great, and then, I don't know, just things kind of foot come off the pedal. In both games, allowed France and New Zealand back into it and everything. And yeah, they're trying stuff and everything. And yeah, it's a friendly, there's nothing on it. But habits form, don't they, Sam? And it just seems a little bit of a worry that, two good teams like France and New Zealand, when you've got your foot on the throat, you don't take it off, regardless of the magnitude of the fixture, as it were.
I'd agree. I mean, look, I'm an annoyingly optimistic person. Glass half full should be my middle name, but I haven't seen any of the latest highlights. But one thing I do really enjoy is the Twitter chat, and a lot of the stuff on there mirrors what you've said, Jez. And I think the positive that we can take from that is we're playing the two. Basically we're the best, and we're playing the two contenders in France and New Zealand, and we're moaning after beating them both.
Yeah.
Right. So whether we played well or whether we didn't play well, in I think a lot of coaches would probably agree that if you manage to win against good teams whilst not playing to your best, that's a pretty good showing of the quality that you potentially possess. And going into a World Cup year next year, which I think I personally believe that if England can win the World Cup on home soil, that could have a similar sort of effect to the Lionesses winning the Euros in the football a couple of years ago. It's actually potentially pivotal to this sport. And I'm very, very excited. I'm going to try and get to as many games as I can. I really want to get behind the girls. And I think, beating France and New Zealand and being upset about it is, I think I see that as a huge win, a massive, massive positive.
Well, you're completely right there, Sam, and I agree with you. I just feel, that I wanted to see, and maybe this will happen in the tournament in Canada that's coming up, that I want to see some statements made, and the best teams, when they win World Cups, whether it be men's rugby or women's rugby, whatever, they make statements and almost win the tournament before the tournament even starts. And, you look at South Africa, the last tournament, after they won their first one for a while, their second win, I think they won that before they turned up because they're just an aura about them. And likewise, New Zealand go into tournaments, women's rugby over the last few years, and they've almost won it. And that's what I want from England, John, is that they create some statements and win some big matches and actually turn around and say to New Zealand, this is the gulf between us, or France, this is the gulf between us. And we've done it in the Six Nations because, in a Six Nations that's been supposedly more competitive, we've destroyed teams. We've put teams out there, and that's what I want to see, John.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. I think there's, as Sam said, it's a bit a weird situation when we're sort of picking holes in the fact that we've beaten New Zealand and France. But when, I'd say at the moment, they're still pretty much maybe 50-50, 60-40 games. Whereas I think what you want to see and what you're alluding to perhaps is you want to, get them out there going, we know we're going to beat you and you're going to lose to us. England are not that level of invincible just yet. But they're on their way to achieving it, I think. As you said about the Six Nations, have been totally dominant, and it's only a matter of time before the Red Roses take over the world.
Yeah, they certainly do. Just taking a Saracen's head on it, a couple of points I want to make. And first one is Poppy Cleal, because I don't know whether Poppy was injured against France when she came on or whatever, but for her not to be in the squad for the New Zealand game is a little bit of a kick in the teeth. And I mean, you talk about May Campbell. I mean, May Campbell may well come in back in the reckoning because Cocaine got a bad injury, it seems, against New Zealand coming on and hurting her elbow. So May well be there or thereabouts for a place for the tournament out in Canada. But, Poppy comes in, has quarter of an hour and then doesn't play again. And I think that's really unfair on Poppy, especially considering her versatility that she can play back row and second row. But then the other concern, Sam, is the fact, for me personally, that Marley Packer is the captain. Yeah, in both games, she's come off on 65, 70 minutes. Me personally, your captain plays minute 0 to minute 80.
I mean, look, I'll play devil's advocate here because I think, I actually agree with you, Jez. I think when you're going up against, two of the other best teams in the world, you want to put your best foot forward. As John said, you want to get to a point where you are dominant. You're going out on the pitch. We've all played the game and we know what it's like, even at an amateur level, when you stride out and you really do believe that you've got, the minerals to dominate your opposition. However, I mean, let me do the old devil's advocate. They were friendlies. We've got a tournament coming up. Maybe the coaching staff are going, we know what these players are about. We don't need to test them anymore. We don't need to see anything more. We've seen everything we need to see in training. We've seen everything we need to see over the last couple of years on the pitch. Let's move. Let's just see how we go with some other players, because don't forget, when tournaments go on, doesn't matter what sport you're in, you pick up injuries. You're going to have to chuck people in that you weren't expecting to. You know, who would have thought that the fourth choice fly half would be playing for New Zealand in a World Cup final a few years back? These things happen. You've got to prepare for all eventualities. That's the only real thing that I can think of when you're moving players around like that, and you're not giving them as much game time as maybe you would do, because maybe, you know, they're a resource that you know all you need to know about, and it's time to, you know, give some play time to people, but you need to learn a little bit more about what, you know, going into a tournament possibly. As I said, just maybe a devil's advocate type view, because actually I tend to agree with you, Jez, on that one.
Yeah, I know, sure. Yeah, I mean, who am I to second guess John Mitchell? I mean, he's a far better, more qualified and more experienced coach than I am, as I've been pointing out on social media to people criticising all sorts of sportsmen and everything. I need to take a bit of my own medicine there and point out the hypocrisy of me questioning coaches are a lot better than me. But I mean, we've mentioned Saracens there, and let's perhaps go on to the Saracens women on a domestic level. And first thing to say, some new signings this week, a couple of players coming back to the club, very popular players as well, and a new signings. But yeah, Chantal Emile, Natalia John, and Alicia Corrigan, three really good signings there, John. Really looking forward to seeing them putting on the traditional all-in-black shirt, as it were, John.
Well, I mean, strength in depth is obviously going to help, and that's what they bring. It looks like a really talented and exciting squad that the women are going to be taking into this season, and I'm genuinely looking forward to seeing what they can achieve, because it's all there for them. Great coaching setup, great squad of players. It's all there.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, I said on the first show that I spoke to Joe Shaw and Alex Osterbury at the SSA AGM. And both Alex and Joe were very enthusiastic about both sides of it. But Alex in particular, there's a fire that's burning there that, you know, they haven't, you know, they didn't win back their trophy, as it were. You know, we see it as their trophy. And I think there is a determination to right that wrong this season. Gloucester have had it on loan for too long now. It's time for us to get back. And so they've made some astute signings and everything. And it was very apparent reading what Alex Osterbury had to say after the Power Up Cup game on Saturday against Quins, how infused, how excited, and how... I'm loath to say confident, because confidence and arrogance are strange bedfellows and can often get together. But he's happy with what he's got, and he feels that they're really building something. And indeed, that was proven when we criticised England in a, loath to say a meaningless fixture, but a friendly fixture. The Power Up Cup again, it's got cup on it, but they are friendlies essentially. But Saracens went over to Queens and took down their pants and give them a spanking, didn't they, Sam?
Yeah, and you know, whenever you're going to put 40 plus points on any team, you know you've done all right. So I think you are right. There's actually, I don't know if maybe Alex is saying a lot of that stuff possibly to mask a little bit of pressure that's actually on Saracens this year. It's a really short, weird season because of all the reasons that we already know about. And it means that the pressure is on us, a little bit like when the men's team got relegated the other year and we had a shortened season. We couldn't really afford to trip up. And I think the same is the case really sort of this year. We haven't really got that way of sort of, you know, meandering into the season and getting up to speed. We've got to sort of hit the ground running. And as you say, Saracens are used to being in the women's game, as they have been in the men in recent years, a dominant force, and they haven't had that dominance. I don't think they've really had as much cohesion as they would have liked, either, with a few players that you weren't suspecting are going to going over the last couple of years as well, which is put a little chink in the armour as well. I think this year's a massive, massive season for the women. I think there's more pressure, funnily enough, on the women's team this year than possibly the men's to get some silverware, because it's something that they've been very used to and they haven't had as much of in the last couple of years. And as you say, that trophy that's on loan, there's only a certain amount of time that something's on loan for until it's just not yours anymore. And I think this year's a big one. We really have to win that trophy, don't we? Anything less is not acceptable. Is that the right way of putting it?
I think you are absolutely right, and yeah, that does put an awful lot of pressure on the women to do that. I don't think if it doesn't happen, it won't be through lack of effort. But what I think is most interesting, John, is what Sam's alluded to there, talking about the shortened season and everything, and the fact that this season we are not going to see an awful lot of internationals, not only at Saracens but also at clubs like Gloucester Hartbury, like Bristol Bears, Queens, Loughborough, whatever. There are going to be players away on international duty quite a lot because you've got the WXV, you've got the Six Nations, and then you've got to build up the World Cup. So I'm sure that players will be taken into training camps as opposed to playing. It's a shortened season, whatever. So I'm wondering whether the recruitment over the last couple of years has been with that in mind and the future in mind, because we've brought in an awful lot of either younger players or players that perhaps are on the verge of going into internationals but aren't ready yet. And that's only going to be good for us because these players, there are going to be possibilities of bolters for World Cup selection and whatever. And these players could easily, see this as their opportunity to knock on John Mitchell's door and say, "Oi, I'm over here, pal."
Yeah, I definitely. I always feel like these kind of periods when there are internationals going on are a bit of a leveler for the whole league. And we've seen over the years, especially with the men, that's where kind of squad players can either sink or swim, and ultimately they're the ones that carry you to the showpiece finals more often than not because they get their opportunity, they take it, or they become an essential part of the squad. The internationals come back and finish the job off. If you've not got a squad strong enough to cope with the loss of some top players, then obviously you're going to struggle. But like I said earlier, you look at the squad on paper, it's very well balanced, it's very well stocked. All right, you're having some players playing out of position occasionally, but they can do a job, like we've mentioned already, but May Campbell playing a 7 on Saturday. They're all capable players, and it's a very capable squad. I think at the end of the day, it'll be whichever squad copes best with it, obviously. And I'd still back Saracens women to come out on top, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, they've got the right attitude, they've got the right setup, and they've got the right players. So, yeah, really looking forward to seeing what they can do this season. Well, shall we have a break there, and then we'll come back and talk men's rugby in part 3.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
You're listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracen Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to the last part of this week's Fezcast with me, Jez, and Sam and John, and time to discuss men's rugby. And we're going to start off with Saris on international. Fiji won their semi-final in the Pacific Cup. Samoa got a bit of a thumping from Japan. So the good news is there that Theo McFarland will be on a flight, hopefully back to the UK to add another string to our bow ready for the season. What we're here, though, to talk about really, in reality, is Saracens men, and second of 2 friendlies played. First against Bedford Blues, which was a bit first half a bit error-strewn and everything, but got the result. But then we played Scarlets, John, and you were there, and it was, on the face of it, a thoroughly impressive performance, a good score, couple of issues, as you'd expect, early doors of the season, but looks like with some new players coming in, they seem to have gelled and working well together.
Yeah, I mean, well, we put 40 points on a good side. You know, they've got Sam Costello at fly half. He's a very good player. Johan Lloyd end up scoring a try for them. There's a good side. It was a good test. I think it was one of them pre-season friendlies where, no disrespect to the likes of Bedford, but that step up and, you know, the step up in opposition means you step up yourself as well. That's how it felt being there Friday night, and it was enjoyable. It was nice to see some of the new faces play. Fergus Burke looks. Well, my son's very excited about him. He's got his name on the back of his shirt already. So, Fergus, don't let us down because I have to buy a new shirt if you turn to shit. There's a lot of players as well that obviously weren't there. So, you know, you mentioned McFarland and Pifoletti was playing in the games with Aroni Maui, and you've got the two Argentines not back yet. And we've not seen any of the England players, bar Theo Dan, during pre-season. So, there's still so many players to come back into that team. It'll obviously be much changed, you'd imagine, by the time the kick-off time at King's Arm comes next weekend. And it was just nice to see. It's just nice to see, first of all, a game where the scoreline doesn't matter. So I'm not losing fingernails. My heart's not jumping out my chest. That's always a nice thing. But yeah, really, just to get back up there, because I do love watching rugby at StoneX, and it was an enjoyable evening. It was. There was some errors. There was some good stuff. There was some bad stuff. There was an awesome try-saving tackle by Tom Willis. That man is a machine. He's going to be our player of the season. I'm calling it now. Andy Christie's going to be runner-up, by the way. Yeah, it was very, very good. It was a nice night. It was a good win. Nothing more to say. It was good. Enjoyed it.
I've got a question for you, John, if you don't mind, because this is something that a lot of people have been asking me, and we've been discussing this, is the style of play that we think Saracens are going to play, this new version of Saracens. Because in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years, we probably had two different Saracens. We've had the pragmatic, kick it, get territory, and then run them over from a line out or whatever. And then we've had the, Sevens barbarian-esque version of Saracens. Do you reckon we've got any indication based on the games of where in that spectrum we're going to be looking at this year?
I think it's going to be a lot more mobile. A lot of it'll be a younger outfit, obviously. A lot of the players that we've let go have been, past their peak, shall we say? Well, I don't like saying that, but it's probably true. You get a bit more go forward from these younger lads who are, Tom Willis, a prime example. He's a different kind of 8 than Billy is, for example. You can't. He's not one of these players who's resting on his laurels. He's got a lot to prove. He wants to get back into the England team. He's so good, honestly. He's going to be amazing for us this season. I think we're going to run with the ball a bit more. Fergus Burke definitely is not the same type of 10 as Owen Farrell. From watching him once, you can tell they're two completely different players, probably different levels of, how can I put this? Owen Farrell was a wonderful man and a great rugby player, but Fergus Burke seems to be someone who enjoys his rugby a lot more than Owen Farrell at least lets on that he is. The try that he scored was lovely. He spotted the gap. He went for it. He ran. He's got excellent pace for a fly half. It's not often you see one that quick. I think it's just the only place that I'm worried about in our team and how we might play is the lack of options in the back three. Although Lewington and Maitland were 32 and 35 or whatever they are, have not been replaced by new players. There's players who were already there, Tobias Elliott, Brandon Jackson, etc. Tobias Elliott's had a good couple of games in pre-season as well, I'll say that. But whether or not they're trusted to be given a go on a regular basis, or we'll end up seeing, kind of players who are really centres on the wings, Sinti, for example, maybe even Lazowski's played there, although that was a while ago, that Daly as well. We're probably going to witness the last season of Alex Good. So how much will he play? That's the only area of the team that worries me. But if you look at the players who are due to come back in, the forward pack looks as great as it's ever looked. We're missing George, Itoje, Earl, McFarland, Ezekwe, new players like Balmain, who are going to come in and strengthen that area. Ollie Hoskins weren't involved on Friday. There's a massive amount of great players there. It's just the fragility will come in the backs. If someone like Rotimi Shegan has another injury-hit season, then there'll be a hole. Hopefully Sam Spink will come back soon enough. Tom Parton as well weren't involved at the weekend. And I'm not sure what's wrong with Gareth Simpson. Hopefully he's not out for too much longer. But yeah, it's still a very, very good squad. It's very strong, but it will be different. I just think it will be more mobile, more go forward.
Well, it's interesting you say that, and in particular to Tom Willis. And I mean, I think I've managed to get through most of the the first cast of season 5 so far without mentioning my specialist position of number 8. But I'm going to mention it now because
Did you used to play, Jez?
I did used to play. I used to play number 8, and yeah, I mean, as I say, I have some knowledge on this. And what was quite interesting was that on our WhatsApp group, Duncan, who's going to be our lead host next week, is been sunning himself out in the south of France, like he often does, old Two Jets, Reed over there. And, I mean, he's got more air miles than Richard Branson up, like, hasn't he? But, I mean, he went out to see the Montpellier-Perpignan game on the weekend, and his exact comment back was, we ain't going to miss Billy Vinapola. And the one thing that we've always said in 5 series now of the Fezcast is we can't think of too many players who we've let go who we regret. And I mean, if we could have kept Vinnie Koch, I think, that's the one player perhaps that we let go that we would rather not gone. But, that was financial more than anything else. But, Billy Vinapola, was it the right time to let him go? Probably. Tom would have had a season working with him, getting more time than Billy. He's gone through. And, of course, you've got the England number 8 playing open side for us as first choice. So, I mean, we're covered there. Likewise, Owen Farrell, far be it from him being over his peak, as he's proven on the weekend with a fine win for in the disco tent in Paris. But he's obviously doing well over there. Mako, when there's players have gone and we've let them go at the right time when it suited them to before they were too old to get a decent payday that they deserved, but also before they fell off that cliff for us, which has always been something that we've been very good at. So yeah, you're right. Tom Willis coming in, superb. Hugh Tizard, finally, as you said earlier on, John, I think we found George Cruz, as it were, because George Cruz is a player that we've missed since he's retired, I think, in a lot of cases. Theo Dan, your hooker position for when Jamie, hangs his boots up is more than covered. You're right, back three, interesting one. Although, Elliot Daly is another player who's been getting some really good plaudits over the last 2 games, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Daly is fast becoming the most underrated man in English rugby. He, particularly at 15, and I've said it a million times, when he first joined the club, I thought it was a colossal waste of money and waste of salary cap allocation, to be perfectly honest with you. But I've been proven wrong, like I've been on many occasions. I think he's a fantastic club 15. I think the pace of the game, he probably just struggles a little bit in international now because he's obviously getting on a little bit. But it's all about bringing him into the game. And, I was taking it back to that conversation and sort of connecting the dots with somebody like a Willis, who I believe has a similar ability to get beyond the gain line as a Billy Vanapola, but is mobile enough to present the ball a lot quicker, which allows a man that we haven't discussed yet, Ivan Van Zyl, to whip those passes away like we know he can. We know that he is on his day the best 9 in the Northern Hemisphere. To be able to get the ball to a man in Fergus Burke that, as John said, has a bit of pace and a bit of zip, who probably suits Ivan Van Zyl's game a lot better than Farrell did, to then be able to bring in the likes of a Daly a little bit more, maybe, and he'll actually probably get his hands on the ball quite a lot. I think what the struggle, I guess, that we've probably seen is that maybe the centres haven't quite been gelling the way that we've been expecting them to do in pre-season. Particularly at Bedford, we had the reports that they were a bit all over the shop, yellow cards and throwing the ball about and all this kind of stuff, not something you really expect. So we are going to require that. And, I mirror what John said as well. Back three outside of Daly is a concern. I'm not convinced on Parton just yet. And yeah, who are you going to stick on the wings? I mean, Cinti, after his performances for Argentina, really, there isn't any excuse that he shouldn't be having that 13 jersey. Let's be honest. I love Alex Ozowski to bits, but who is man for man the better player right now? And it is Cinti. So we've got some choices to be made, right?
It's an interesting thing you say there, and to come back to what John's saying about wingers and everything like that. This goes back to the old story of Rory Underwood playing for England, and some of us be old enough to remember Rory Underwood playing for England. He scored 49 tries for England. People will tell you that he would have scored 100 tries for the fact that he was playing outside Jerry Gusker at the time, was the best outside centre in the world. And, that's the thing that you'd get with Cynthia, particularly if you've got a pack giving you go forward ball. Ivan Van Zyl, as you say, whipping it out at walk factor 6, and Fergus Burke going into gaps. Are we going to actually really need wingers to be scoring tries if you've got Cynthia or Elliot Daly coming in? Because, the one thing you say, which is the same with Alex Good, is that, as you get older, where you don't lose pace, in fact, where you gain pace, is in reading the game. And Elliot reads the game beautifully well, as Alex Good does. And, that first 10 yards of pace is in the top 2 inches of the body. And, if you see where the gap is, you don't actually have to be Usain Bolt to go through those gaps.
Do you know what? It's funny you say that. What John's just said in terms of Burke, I'll put my little. John said his bit. He said he reckons that Willis is going to be player of the season. I think we're going to score more tries through the middle than out wide this year, and I think that's maybe why the coaching staff aren't as concerned about having the wingers. In the past, you've had the Lewingtons, the Strettles of this world scoring for fun, because we play such a tight game. We wind the teams in, and then we've got so much space out wide that, most people's nans could probably run tries in. How many times have we seen Maitland drop over the line after a 7-meter run because, he's out of breath? Sorry, Sean, but
that's somebody who's not going to come on the first cast, then, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll chat to him. We're friends. I think we're going to score a lot more tries through the middle. I think Van Zyl's going to get a bit more time because players are going to be worried about Burke. They're going to give Van Zyl more space. He'll make more gains through the middle. Then people are then going to be like, oh crap, we've got to worry about Van Zyl. I mean, Burke gets a little bit more space. He can make some breaks. He can offload it to a Tompkins or someone like that. But then you've got the old axis that Farrell used so well over the last couple of seasons of having Daly literally just sitting behind him, deciding where he's going to go, and that gap will appear. I think we'll score more down the what we would call the BC channels than the DE channels than we have done in recent seasons. And as much as that isn't maybe as quantifiable as who's going to win player of the season, that's where my marker is for the year. I think through the middle, we're going to be more direct.
Well, yeah, I can see the rationale behind that, and looking forward to it. And as I say, well, the season kicks off this weekend, and we've got a trip down to Kingsholm, one of the favourite places in the world, not to go and play in front of the shed. We'll have a chat about that. But before that, Barry, our roving reporter, has put himself in the Lions Den, as it were, and has spoken to one of the chaps from Gloucester rugby supporters, Ed Price, and we've got his little corner coming up just now.
Hi, this is Petrus Duplessis, and you are listening to the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, I'm joined now by Ed Price from Cherry Jam. Ed, hello and welcome to the Fezcast.
Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. Now, for the benefit of our listeners, Cherry Jam is the totally unofficial Gloucester Rugby supporter podcast, or, as it describes itself, a few mates sharing their mutual suffering with the wider world. Hopefully, on the edge of this new season, there's not too much suffering around.
Well, we haven't lost any league games yet, so that's a massive plus for us. But it's been an interesting sort of ride. We've been doing it for 4 years now, and there've been some ups, mainly downs, and it's just kind of been a continuous stream of misery. But there's always that optimism, as you know. Even you as a Saracens fan and as a Saracens podcast, you get your lows, but it's slightly more highs than we do. But it's the sort of trials and tribulations of being a rugby supporter.
Yeah, absolutely. All part of the fun. Now, has it been a busy summer down at Kingsholm?
It's been an interesting one. We've had a few. We've had actually probably, if you look at over the last couple of seasons, very few departures, a few incoming players, but in positions we needed to strengthen. But not a huge turnover comparatively to previous years. Pre-season has been a bit truncated. Only 2 pre-season games, both away, unfortunately for Gloucester supporters. And obviously countless rumours around certain players and a little bit of interest in former players and what they've been getting up to stateside. But it's been a bit of a weird one, really. Normally you get a lot more ins and outs than we have had this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously you lost Lewis Rees-Zammit partway through last season, and then Johnny May at the end of the season. But you've replaced him with a winger that Saracens and rugby fans will be exceptionally familiar with in the returning Christian Wade from NFL. How's he been shaping up?
Yeah, I mean, you saw him. So Gloucester fans probably haven't seen a huge amount of him because the pre-season games have been away. But we got a brief glimpse during the open training session, and the one thing that struck me was just that turn of pace is still there, that explosive pace, which is something I would say probably Johnny May had back in the day. Lewis Rees-Zammit, interestingly, I've never described him of having explosive pace. He was somebody who would be very, very quick and would stay quick. He continued to accelerate away or maintain that speed, which was very dangerous for defences. But Wade has got that ability just to bust through a gap, create a hole, and then go. And so that's going to be interesting to see how he fits in. He's definitely already a very popular member of the squad. He's sort of enamored himself with supporters in terms of he's a little bit odd. I think he's in his own words. And Lewis Ludlow, the captain of Gloucester, has already referenced the fact that Johnny May leaving left a bit of a hole in terms of the weirdness within the squad. So having someone like Christian Wade coming in to fill that gap's been quite useful. But yeah, he seems to be settling in really well. And I think we're all Gloucester fans are quite excited to see him in cherry and white and hopefully running down the wing in front of the shed.
Yeah, he always seemed to turn it on against Saracens as well when he was at Wasp. So he's definitely a player we'll need to look out for this weekend. Now, you've also had you've had a big change at fly half. Adam Hastings disappearing off to pastures new, and Gareth Anscombe coming in to join Thomas Williams at 9. An all Welsh halfback pairing there. So how are they been getting on?
Again, similar to Christian Wade, really. I mean, you get the feeling that's definitely the halfback pairing that I think we'll probably expect to see most of the season. The problem with Hastings was when he was playing for us, he was brilliant. Generally, he was very, very good, and we tended to win with him in the team. Unfortunately, though, he's been crocked for about 3/4 of the time that he was with us. Anscombe is going to be at a bit of an unknown quantity because he's suffered with injuries over the last couple of years, as everyone knows. If we can keep him fit, and we can get a good run out of games out of him, I think he's going to be a real asset, particularly with the way that the coaches and the team want to play this season. Thomas Williams is going to be, again, probably the number 1 9 this season. We've got a glut of 9s. We've got 4 now, which suggests one of them will be off at the end of the season. And my expectation, it probably would be the local boy in Charlie Chapman. But the rest of the squad is pretty well balanced. The scrum half and hookers, we've got millions of them. So we'll probably have to offload a few of those at the end of the season. But yeah, I mean, Anscombe, I think, is, again, exciting. We've just got to hope we can keep him fit. One thing I would say is that this season we do have ready-made backups now in Charlie Atkinson and even George Barton. George Barton's got a lot of experience now. So it's not as necessarily a huge jump down. When Hastings wasn't available for most of the time, we basically had George Barton and no one else. Or Billy 12trees. They were the 2 options previously. So that's going to make a big difference. And I say Thomas Williams is going to be able to fit in nicely. I think the style of rugby that we want to play, Williams being a bit of a sniper as well as a good passer, I'm hoping that we might see a little bit more heads-up rugby than we have been in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think I've picked up there's some talk of changing your style of play. I believe you're looking for more an offloading game this season. Is that correct?
I think not kicking it is the general. So I think the expectation is that we want to try and play a little bit like Northampton. Now, the difficulty is Northampton play that absolutely superbly. And to hit those levels, you need to be pretty much on the money from the start. I think we're going to struggle with that. What you might find is that, unlike last season, where those close games we weren't able to get results, on losing by 3 to 5 points, etc. When you're playing a more expansive type of rugby, you've probably got a better chance of winning those games or catching opposition cold in the first 40 minutes and building up a decent score. They're definitely wanting to play a more aggressive defence. They're definitely wanting to play more heads-up rugby from their own 22, less kicking. That's going to cause probably some issues. If we've all seen Bristol over the last couple of years, they go from spanking teams 60-odd points to 10 to getting absolutely hiding on their own patch as well. So I expect there's probably going to be a little bit of that. But the biggest problem last season, other than the defeats, was the manner of the defeats. We were getting turned over and we weren't playing any rugby. So a lot of the gripes with George Skivington and the coaching staff was the style of rugby as well as the losing games. So hopefully, hand in hand, we might see an improvement there. There are some doubts still, and defensively, there's probably going to be some big issues that we need to resolve.
Yeah, I remember from my visit to Kingsholm last season, particularly the morning after, bumping into some Gloucester fans before I headed back here. I got the impression that Skivington was under pressure then, but he's now become your longest-serving DOR or head coach in the last 30 years as he enters into his 5th season. So is he starting with a clean sheet with a change of players and a change of style, or is he still under a little bit of pressure, do you feel?
I think he's under pressure personally. I think that with the start we've got some very tough games. So obviously Saracens at home, Bristol away, Bath at home. I think we've got Sale away as well. And then we play Newcastle. And if you look at those fixtures, it's not unreasonable, bearing in mind what our form was like last year, that we could go into the Newcastle game 0 for 4. And therefore, if we're not in and around certainly top 6 by Christmas, I think there could be some developments. He's in, I believe, his last year of his contract. And therefore, you wonder whether the decision to not replace him in the summer, and there was a lot of clamour for it from amongst a certain section of Gloucester supporters, whether those cries and those things might change around Christmas if we're not there or thereabouts. We can't finish 9th again. Simply put, that's a big no-no. The club want to move forward. They want to get over this pretty bad spell of form and league positions. And I think that's going to be a minimum. We have to finish above 9th, which is remarkable to be saying that, but that's the thing we have to be doing, and then hoping that we can try and get in and around the playoffs. I'm not expecting that. I think that's a lot to ask, bearing in mind it's a very similar squad to what it was last year, and there's a lot of young players in the squad. So yeah, we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic we'll win more games, but I worry that if it starts to go badly wrong, how long the supporters will be on board with Skivington and the coaching staff.
Our pre-season for you guys has been 2 away games against URC opposition, Munster away, which you won, and then a narrow loss to Edinburgh last Friday. Talk us through those, Ed, if you can.
Yeah, so the game on Friday, I'm brilliantly not able to view it at all. So there was no coverage at all. I think there are now highlights available on Edinburgh's website. But basically, from what I've seen and heard and read from the people who did attend the game as Gloucester supporters, first 40, very encouraging again. Some really nice play off the back of set pieces and interchanging. Slight worry that Jack Singleton took a knock in the first 20, so I'm hoping that's just precaution rather than a serious issue. Bearing in mind, I don't think the other hookers have played a huge amount the rest of pre-season. And then obviously at half-time, kind of mass changes, and you do lose a little bit there in terms of how much you can learn from a particular game. Scoring lots of points, creating lots of chances in terms of the in the 22, which again probably was an issue last season, which we weren't able to do, mainly because we kept kicking the ball away. And then Munster, similar really. Munster's first half, I think we scored 33 points. Didn't score a single point in the second half in both of those games. And I think that's probably the only big concern is with all the caveats around mass changes of teams and getting everyone minutes, you'd hope that there's going to be some sort of follow on in terms of the second half and the performances, and we didn't quite see that. Defensively against Munster, much improved. Edinburgh struggled, lots of silly penalties and those things. But as I said, you can't learn a huge amount from pre-season because it's a really truncated pre-season. We've only had 2 games.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the front row, and obviously one player we haven't discussed is Fraser Balmain, who I believe we've actually paid a transfer fee for. Unfortunately, he's not been able to feature for us in either of our 2 pre-season games. So what can Sarries fans expect to see from him when he does make his debut?
Well, I mean, Fraser, to be fair to him, he was incredibly resilient. He went through something crazy, like I think nearly a season and a half before any sort of injuries or niggles, and was playing through a lot probably when he didn't need to. He is a very good, I'd say, a good ball carrier in terms of he'll chuck it up and make those hard yards. I think the only concern that I would say, if you're a Saracen supporter around his scrummaging, he does tend to, if he's on the wrong side of the ref, he will give away a lot of penalties. Gloucester found that last season, where towards the back end of the season, and I'm not sure if it was because he was carrying an injury or not, but he did give away a lot of penalties, and other players were coming in and sort of shoring up the scrum, where I would say a year and a half beforehand, Fraser would be coming on to shore up the scrum in those instances. So, I think it's very much dependent on the ref with Fraser these days, but a really good pro, a really good guy to have around the building. He's a very, very sardonic sort of, doesn't say a huge amount, but he's got a good sense of humour on him, and I think he'll be well liked. He's a great player to have in the squad in terms of as a backup prop, and I think he'll probably do a decent job for Sarries, particularly in those games where you've got to rotate ahead of Champions Cup games and things like that.
Sure, and if he's a character in the front row, I can assure you he'll get on with Alec Cleary, who's as mad as a box of frogs, as they say. But a great character with it. Now, very quickly before we go, just for the benefit of our supporters, if you do get a chance to listen to the Cherry Jam podcast, try and pick up the first episode of this season when they had an in-depth discussion with Lance Bradley, who was former CEO at Gloucester and is now performing a similar role at Ospreys, I believe. A fascinating chat with him, and he backs up some of the tales that we'd heard from Lucy Ray and from Mark Thompson over the last couple of seasons about the various trials and tribulations around rugby, particularly around COVID and the way all that was handled. But it certainly was an interesting chat, and looking forward to the game on Saturday afternoon. One final thing for you: there's been a lot of talk about Zach Mercer. Is his future sorted now, or is he off at the end of this season?
I would suspect, based on the noises, that he's probably going to be off at the end of the season. Nothing's been confirmed, and I don't think George Skivington or anybody's actually commented officially on it. It's been, look, we'll talk about it when anything does get confirmed. The issue is he's on a big money. Look, he's on big money. He's still got, I think, 2 years maybe, at the end of this season left on his contract. So, he doesn't have to move, and I'm sure Gloucester would prefer to keep him, but he is on big money. I think he was sold a dream by England that was never really going to materialise when Steve Borthwick came across, because he's just not Steve Borthwick's type of player. I think if you put Zach Mercer in any team, he's going to improve it. And when he plays for Gloucester, we tend to play better. It'd be sad to see him go, but at the end of the day, the financials are clear. If we can save some money and we can get a player in, maybe a younger player, there's rumours around about certain players we might be looking to pick up. I think it would make probably the best sense to everybody. Look, he's not, Zach Mercer's not going to get in the England team probably now, ever. And I think it's probably best for everybody that at the end of the season he goes off to France, earns his really nice wedge, lives in a lovely part of the world, and has a great couple of years playing rugby.
Yeah, it's a shame about the number 8 position at England. I mean, obviously it's our own Ben Earl, and we wouldn't want to do him out of a job. But he's not a natural number 8, and I mean he's performed miracles there for England, and obviously the balance across the back three looks fairly good, and obviously something that Borthwick likes. But yeah, it does seem a slightly strange decision. It's almost a continuation of the Eddie Jones philosophy of picking not necessarily the best players in their best positions. So, as long as they get away with it, we shouldn't really knock it, and results will be the end arbiter of that, I guess. But Ed, thank you very much for your time in joining us on the Fezcast this week. And I won't ask you for a score prediction because that's obviously we're going to back our own sides on Saturday. But what I will ask you is how do you expect Sarries to go this season in general?
It's going to be really intriguing. Obviously, losing Owen Farrell, massive influence across the team and the whole setup at Sarries. It's one less sort of bogeyman for Gloucester supporters to boo. I'm sure we'll find others, don't worry. But one thing about Owen Farrell is incredibly professional, and I mean that across the whole board in terms of his whole way of playing. So that filling that gap for Saracens is going to be, I think, quite interesting and intriguing. But there's so much quality and talent in that squad. There's so many good young players coming through. I'd expect Saracens, as we always do, to be seen probably to be up there with Northampton and maybe Sale this season as the ones to beat. And I'd say maybe an outside bet on Bath again, unfortunately. If Gloucester can be mixing in around with where Saracens are, I think we'd all be delighted. So that's probably how I would see Saracens going. They're going to be ones to catch.
Well, that's always good to hear. We've been discussing it ourselves on the podcast, and we can't decide if we're 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th. To be quite honest with you, we could be anywhere within that. We still think that Northampton are the side to catch, but time will tell. Ed, once again, thank you very much for joining us, and once again to our listeners, if you do get the chance, go and have a listen to the Cherry Jam podcast, a most excellent production, and thanks again for joining us, Ed.
Thanks, Barry.
Cheers.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, and thanks to Barry and Ed Gloucester for that. I mean, we don't have any clue what they've said on this because they're recording it tomorrow. What are we hoping for going down to Kingston? It's always a difficult place to go. Is it going to be a flowing game? What are we going to do? I think we're just going to go out full throttle, aren't we, John, and see what we can do and put a marker on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. We played them away early last season, didn't we? During the during the World Cup, and after conceding an early penalty, that happened to be the only points that they got on the ball. So a 24-3 away win again would be nice. But I think it's always it's one of those places, Gloucester, where it's a tough place to play, regardless of who they've brought in, who's going to be on the pitch for them.
I think if you being brutally honest, the away to Gloucester is probably the game that I would have said is was the one that I least wanted as a first game of the season, particularly after last year. I went down there 2 years ago for the Owen Farrell last-minute drop goal, and I can tell you it is hostile as hell. I've never been to a North London derby, so I don't know what that's like, but Jesus Christ, it was very intense in there, very football-esque in its atmosphere. The fans down there are extremely passionate. They are going to be buoyed by, a marquee signing like a Christian Wade. My humble opinion is that he's there because no one else wanted him. But for them, they're going to be buoyed by that. And I think it's going to be an incredible, task to go down there and get 4, let alone 5 points. A lot of new faces, some of which haven't had any preseason game time. It's a massive ask to go down there and get anything out of that game. But if anyone's going to do it, it'll be us, won't it?
Well, of course. I mean, that's the other thing as well. I mean, potentially the worst thing that could happen is that we go down there and give them a thumping because suddenly, that then builds, as we spoke about before, confidence, bordering on arrogance,
I hope this doesn't come back to bite me on the arse, but hey, it can't be worse than last year, right? First game of the season.
Well, you're not wrong there, are you, Sam? But look, I'm looking forward to it. You all looking forward to it. I'm sure everybody out there in Fezcast land are looking forward to it. The return of competitive rugby for the Men in Black, and yeah, we can't wait. And next week, Duncan's in the hot seat, as I say, leading on the show. Not sure who he's got lined up as being co-hosts and everything, but I won't be here because it's my wife's birthday on Sunday, so I shan't be around to do any recording next week, so I'm having another week off. Woohoo! But that'll probably be it then until sort of like February time. And we'll sign off now and say, go on, the Men in Black. Let's go down to Gloucester and give them a proper thumping.
This is the Fezcast.